Hey everybody, I'm Toussaint Morrison. Thank you so much for tuning into the Social Science Club. We're gonna jump right into it. This is what I learned from attending a trial against the city of St. Paul. So I'll explain the very few details of it. I won't get entirely into it because it will be a way longer video than this needs to be. But I want you to understand from this video what it's like being in the courtroom where the defendant is the city and the plaintiff is somebody suing an entire city. So for this particular trial, a young black man was killed by the city of St. Paul in 2017. The statute of limitations runs out after a certain time, and the plaintiff, the mother of the black man that was killed by the city of St. Paul by two police officers, essentially filed a civil lawsuit right before the statute of limitations ran out. So you have X amount of time before your loved one or your family member or whoever gets killed by a city by law enforcement, and then you have X amount of time to file a lawsuit against the city. Now, it's not a criminal lawsuit, it's a civil lawsuit. A civil lawsuit means the plaintiff to prove the defendant acted negligently with the 51% degree of certainty. So it's not beyond the shadow of a doubt, but with 51% degree of certainty they acted negligently. So that's all that had to happen. The first thing I will tell you is this: going into court is extremely boring a little bit. It's a little bit, there's not a whole lot of excitement like you see in the TV shows. The one thing I will say though is that the boring part of it wasn't unexciting about it. It was just a lot of jargon being thrown around that I didn't understand, legal terms and whatnot, just things that I obviously didn't understand because I'm not a lawyer. But the next thing that I understood was how important this case was to the plaintiff, how important it was to the mother of this young man who was killed by St. Paul police officers. So just being in the courtroom, you could feel the energy and you could feel the severity of how much this meant. Now, historical context regarding this case. Because 98.1% of police officers who have killed somebody from 2013 to 2022 never faced criminal charges, there are probably a little more than that where the city will face civil charges, where they'll be sued. So somebody may be killed by police of the city, but then the city will be sued for wrongful death by the family. So civil lawsuits definitely have a higher percentage than criminal lawsuits throughout the United States of America. That being said, there hasn't been a whole lot of civil lawsuits in the city of St. Paul that have filed against that city. So this happening, at the time it was happening, slipping in, filing in right before the statute of limitations ran out, I believe it was a week they had left or a few days, to the city of St. Paul, it was a big surprise. So the mayor, the DA who presides over that county, and the chief of police were all really blindsided by this. They didn't really see this coming. So the other thing I noticed was the defense attorney for the city of St. Paul seemed extremely unprepared. He did not seem to he didn't seem to be able to navigate what had actually happened in the scenario of this young black man being killed by the St. Paul police. He didn't seem to fully understand the scope of what was going on. He kept repeating himself, and he resorted to three things that I noticed to dehumanize the young black man who had been killed by police, and also make him seem to be some type of, make him out to be somebody who was overly aggressively violent and deserved to be killed. So the defense of St. Paul, his job was to essentially make this young black man look like he deserved to die, or the other way around, that the officers feared for their lives. So the three things that this defendant of the city did, one was he repeatedly spoke about the drugs that were at play. Were there drugs there? Were there drugs in his system? And the way that we look at drug use in the United States is accusatory and punitive, and it's dehumanizing. And somebody may be going through something, regardless, even outside of the scenario that I'm talking about, and we look at addiction as something that is worthy of being punished as opposed to being rehabilitated. Instead of saying, that person, how dare they use those drugs, we could say, wow, what's going on with them? Maybe they need some help. Maybe somebody needs to talk to them. So instead of obviously going that route, using the punitive route that our legal system has historically gone by in the United States, the idea was to condemn this man for there even being drugs near him during the scenario. The second thing that the defense used was guns. He said there was a gun on the young man as he was running away from police. And he kept referencing the gun, which was out of bullets and it was broken and it was not of any use at that time. And he kept referencing the gun. Historically, when we look at guns on different bodies with different amounts of melanin in those bodies, you will see media frame that person differently. Lone wolf, violent versus, you can go into it for yourself. The way that white people are framed in headlines with guns versus the way people of color are framed in headlines with guns are two very different things. And the way that he framed it was he was overly aggressive and violent and we didn't know what was going to happen. And then the last thing that he said that the cops, that he said in defense of the police were they feared for their lives. And you will hear this every single time when somebody is defending police online or in the media or whatever, they feared for their lives. It legally then gives them the right to kill somebody and justifies it in a court of law. So when they stand by that, that's their case. And I'm not sitting here to debunk any of that. I feel the way I feel about it, but I'm giving you the information on what I experienced. Guns, drugs, and the cops fearing for their lives. And at the end of it, the way that none of that worked in the case of the defense was because the prosecution had an entire team with them and a lot of community members that helped out as well to break this case down, figure out exactly what happened, why it happened, and what was going on. People that went over surveillance cameras numerous times, people that went tediously through frame by frame. Now, a city isn't going to do that. One, they don't want to. Two, they don't usually have to. And three, sometimes they don't have the money to because they're pouring it into law enforcement, not into the defense of. So they never have to defend themselves, so why pour any money into that? So this team that tediously broke down frame by frame what was going on, all the evidence, all the witnesses that had something to say about what happened, they broke all of that down and presented it in court. And what ended up happening was the plaintiff won. And the city of St. Paul lost and had to fork over $11.5 million for wrongful death of this young black man. And the thing that I will never forget being present throughout all of that, because I have worked with this mother numerous times, and she has shown up for a lot of other families that have been affected by police brutality. That aside, watching the defense, I could not shake it that perhaps historically, the city of St. Paul or the United States is coming into an era or situation, or I should say a time, where police are being held accountable for what they're doing. And if not criminally, the city will be held civilly. And civilly, I don't know if that's a word. But that being said, what happened afterwards was the district attorney made a public statement and said, wow, that's a lot of money, but I stand by the justification of these cops having to kill this man. And the mayor came out and said a similar public statement and said, whoa, that's a lot of money. But I still stand by the justification of these people having to kill this man. And the other option for the mayor and the DA were to say nothing. They didn't have to say anything. They chose to say those things because being found guilty in a civil trial, it made them look really, really bad. But the thing was that them choosing to say anything made them look even worse. And so with all that being said, what I found fascinating was the response of elected officials who are in positions where they don't have to respond to anything, and also the power of community in breaking down a case, doing a reinvestigation of the whole thing, filing it just before the statute of limitations runs out, and winning. And it was a huge win, and it obviously changes the course and obviously the conduct and culture of that police department, because that's $11.5 million that the city could have used for a lot of other things other than having to pay families for killer cops. So I would hope that it would make the city rethink some of its practices in lethal force, excessive force, and the way that its police officers are trained going down the road. But that was my experience in a courthouse. And yeah, the energy was definitely, although it was boring in the beginning, it was not towards the end, and it really, really got me thinking on how institutions like our legal institution works, how our criminal system works, how our law enforcement institution works, and other things as well. And I would challenge you to attend a trial. Go there, just see what it's like. I mean, it's part of what your tax dollars are paying for, so you might as well see what's going down. And just experience what it's like in there. because that's the way our system is working. The judges, to the lawyers, to the city attorneys, to the district attorneys, to the police on trial, to the families affected by police brutality. It's quite the experience, and I think it would help you to understand the system a lot better to attend one of those. All right, that's all I got for this video. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you in the next one. If you found this video of value, click like. If you haven't subscribed, click on the subscribe button. We'll see you in the next one.